making room, and making plans, moving up, letting go, and kicking back. There are things in life that matter, and at NBT Bank, we're always here to help make those things possible. Because making it easier for you to live your life and focus on what matters to you is what we focus on every day.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 21st Century Business Forum. I'm your host, Clay Young. This morning, we are excited to have with us the man known as the father of modern networking, Dr. Ivan Misner. Dr. Misner is the founder and chief visionary officer of BNI, the world's largest business networking organization with more than 10,000 chapters throughout every populated continent of the world. Each year, BNI passes millions of referrals, resulting in billions of dollars worth of business for its members. He is also a New York Times best-selling author who has written 26 books, including his latest, Infinite Giving. Dr. Misner, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I am doing fantastic. Thank you.
You know, it's so good to talk to you because BNI is such a major part of people being able to live their dreams and interact with their gifts and talents and offer those gifts and talents and services to the world. So I want to talk about that, but obviously we're in the era of coronavirus and the COVID-19 impact on everything that's going on. Are businesses relaxing their networking efforts right now? And if they are, is that a bit of a mistake?
Yeah, well, the businesses that aren't very smart are relaxing their networking efforts. I mean, a lot of people, especially in the beginning, which I always find interesting. My experience in running this network for almost 37 years is that when difficult times occur, people either get frozen by fear or they get focused by fear. And it's the people who get focused by fear. And listen, we've been living through some fearful times. The COVID virus has impacted a lot of businesses, but the ones who have gotten focused by that fear and recognize that today more than ever, they need their network. That the last thing you should do is abandon your network when you're going through difficult times. Instead, you want to embrace your network, immerse yourself in your network, and re-engage if you've started to back off. You want to re-engage with that network. Otherwise, you're going to struggle. And it's already a struggle enough. But if you let your network lapse, you're going to be in worse times, not better.
What does engage your network mean?
First, I think it begins with the right mindset. And to me, the right mindset begins with the understanding that I believe that hope is more powerful than fear. That a belief in what one can accomplish, even during difficult times, it's got to start with that. So a hope plus a plan plus taking action. That's what you need to do. So what's that look like in terms of engaging your network? That means that you should be doing more networking than ever. And yeah, it's by Zoom or by Skype or by telephone, more than, maybe possibly in person, although it's opening up. It's a lot more open than it was, but still, having the opportunity to connect with people by Zoom is fantastic. I mean, think about this. What if this had happened in 1990 or 2000, even 2010? The technology wasn't what it is today. What if it had happened 10, 20 years ago? We'd all be in big trouble. So look at the fact that luckily this happened when we had technology in place that we could do something about it. And doing something about it means being engaged with your network. Go to networking meetings. BNI had pivoted to online. Do one-to-ones with people online. Sit down and do meaningful one-to-ones. And if you want to talk about what a meaningful one-to-one is, I'd be happy to talk about that. But you do meaningful one-to-ones so that you can refer people, so they can refer you, so you can get some good ideas. Here's one example of what I'm talking about. We had a furniture repair shop in the United States that when COVID hit, they were not an essential business. They had to lay off all their employees. Furniture reupholstery shop. And they did a one-to-one with, they were both BNI members, one-to-one with another BNI member. And the BNI member said, "You have a lot of cloth there in the shop, don't you?" And she said, "I literally have tons of cloth." And now this was in like March of 2020 when the US locked down. And nobody had masks. And there was a shortage. And the other member said, "Have you thought about maybe becoming a COVID mask manufacturer?" And she's like, "No, I hadn't thought of that." So she made 100 masks. She gave them away to 50 people, 2 to 50 people with her business card. She said, "One is a gift for you, because I know masks are hard to find. The other, I ask you as a favor, would you give it to a doctor, to a nurse, to a hospital, to a senior center, and tell them that I can make masks, I can make them quickly." She got so many orders, she was able to hire back all of her employees. and what a great story. This furniture reupholstery shop became a mask manufacturer. Hope is more powerful than fear.
Hope is more powerful than fear. I love it. What have been some of your biggest takeaways about with networking during a pandemic?
Yeah. So, the whole idea of getting frozen by fears was the first. I saw it again, and I've seen it in the past in recessions where people just get frozen and they don't act. Right now, the big thing, is Zoom fatigue. Oh, Zoom fatigue. Okay. Zoom fatigue. Buck up, Buttercup. I mean, come on. What do you want to do? Go bankrupt? It's like, this is great. Look at this interview. Okay, there might be glitches in the interview. There might be times where you don't hear, but this is fantastic. We can actually talk to each other in different locations, not just by phone, not just audio, but visual. Look at business. You can have a face-to-face one-to-one through two-dimensional one-to-one with people around the world. Is it as good as in person? Yeah, maybe not, but still, buck up. I think it's really important that we hold in our minds the vision of what we want to accomplish in life and in business. Hold the vision, not the obstacle. Too many people hold the obstacle. "Oh, I'm tired of Zoom." That's the obstacle. Hold the vision. What's the vision? Well, I need to pay the mortgage. I want to be successful in what I do. I want to serve people. That's the vision. Don't hold the obstacle, hold the vision.
I love that. Hold the vision, not the obstacle. Where'd that come from?
Oh, I've heard, many people talking about staying focused on your vision and not get caught up in the problem. A good friend of mine, Mark McCurgow, who wrote the book Solutions Focus, often says, if all you do is focus on the problem, you become an expert at problems. What you have to do is focus on the solutions. And if you focus on solutions, not problems, you can then become an expert on solutions. And it's all sort of part and parcel with that idea of focus on the solution, not the problem.
Is the pandemic just a temporary adjustment to networking and eventually we'll get back to normal? Or do you see where we are a place that we're going to remain? It's going to stay this way forever?
So I think it expedited what was inevitable.
Okay.
And I actually wrote an article on this at Entrepreneur. I'll give you a link to it if you want to put it in the show notes. In 2018, I wrote an article in 2018 that basically said the future of face-to-face is online. And when I said this in BNI, the network I started, which is a in-person network, And when COVID hit, we had almost 10,000 chapters who met every week in person. And we had to pivot 10,000 chapters to online. But I had been talking about this for almost 3 years. I started talking about it in 2018, where I said, technology is advancing at such a rate that it is inevitable that in-person networks are going to meet online. It might be a hybrid. I didn't say this in the article, but I realized that it might be a hybrid. It might start as a hybrid, but it was inevitable. And that B&I would either be disrupted, because we are the 600-pound gorilla in the networking arena. We're either going to be disrupted, or that we would lead the disruption. And I wanted to lead the disruption, not be disrupted. And there are many big companies that have been disrupted over the years. You know, Clay, Kodak invented the digital camera. They owned the patent on the digital camera. But their executives said, well, we don't want to interfere with our film processing business. And besides, who's going to ever look at photographs on a computer? How'd that work out for them? Not so well. And so I don't want to be Kodak. I don't want to be these other companies like Blockbuster that were disrupted by technology. I want to lead the disruption. So I wrote this article in 2018. I think we're going to get there faster than I anticipated, but that this transition is inevitable. By the way, we did a survey in B&I about online versus in person. And a year and a half ago, if we would have asked this question, do you want to meet online? I am virtually positive, based on my conversations with people, that 98.9% of the membership would have said no, in person. We did a survey of 2,300 of our members. Only 33% said we want to go back to meeting in person only. 16% said online only, and 51, just shy of 51% said we want a hybrid. We want a blend of meeting online several times a month and in person once or more a month. I think COVID has changed, has expedited the change that was inevitable.
It's interesting that you make that comment and give that analysis, because it kind of leads to where I'd like to go next. You know, at some point we're going to return to in-person networking in a big way. What do you recommend for business owners?
I recommend that they go back to meeting in person at least part of the time, because there's nothing more powerful, Clay, than looking somebody in the three-dimensional eyes, shaking their hands, having a real in-person conversation. It's also more work. You got to get up at dark 30 to get in your vehicle and drive miles to get to a location, and then drive back. And, so there are pros and cons to both. And to me, the ideal scenario, until we are able to have holographic meetings with people like they did in Star Wars. You remember Star Wars, the Jedi Knights?
Yeah.
There were there was like a real Jedi, a couple of holographic Jedis, then a real Jedi. Until we get to that point, and by the way, when we get there, Clay, I want to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay. So, I think at some point we're going to have that kind of technology, which I talk about in the article in 2018. And so maybe then it's all online. But until then, I think a hybrid is the perfect solution, because you are meeting in person and you're meeting online, which is really easy. You roll out of bed, comb your hair, you can show up in sweatpants, nobody knows. And, you hold your meeting.
You've talked about being mentally nimble, and our audience is business people. Our audience is people who are either in business or trying to get there. And before I move on, I want to just talk about the ability to stay mentally nimble, to be ahead of where the curve is going, and to, as you mentioned, Blockbuster, not be so stuck in where you are that you don't realize the trend is shifting. Could you kind of talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that means you need to really be reading up on what's going on in your industry and in industries that could disrupt you. For example, here's a great example. Sears. Now, you might be too young to remember the Sears catalog, Clay.
Nope,
But,
I'm very much aware of it.
all right.
used to get them at the house. So yes.
Yes, the Sears catalog. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Sears was a much, much larger retailer than they are now. And they used to, for more than 100 years, they had this catalog. It was like that thick, and it had everything you could imagine in it. And they would mail it to your house, and you could order from the Sears catalog, and things would be then shipped to you. Sound familiar at all? Well, Sears decided that the catalog business was dying. And in 1993, they shut down their catalog. Amazon incorporated in 1994.
Mm-hmm.
Sears could have been Amazon if someone in their company had said, hey, hang on a second. Catalog business is dying. I recognize that. That's the obstacle. What's the vision? Deliver our products directly to the individual. There's this new technology, this internet thing. Maybe we should spend some time and money looking into that. So that's what I'm talking about by being nimble. Take a look at what's coming out. And you don't even have to be ahead of the curve. At least be with the curve. If you're ahead of it, then you may have a chance of being the industry leader. But if you want to die, be behind the curve. You want to be at least with the curve. And so you got to read, you got to know what's going on in your industry. You should go to professional association meetings. You should be reading things that could be potential disruptors to you. Generally right now, a lot of that's technology based. So you should keep an eye on what's going on. And that's what I was doing. That's why I wrote that article in 2018, because I knew it would be a disruption.
How valuable is time management and being able to set the day and stick with the plan?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Different. We're changing lanes. And then this is an important one. I am a zealot about my calendar. And here's what I do with my calendar. I color code it. So every block in my calendar, and I try to block out virtually every hour, even if I block off time to think or time to write, because a lot of what I do now is writing. I block it off. So this time period is a writing block, and I write. This time period is whatever, and I color code it. And I color code it based on the things that I have to do and the things that I want to do. So, if I have an administrative meeting, it's in one various shade of blue. Or if I've got, if I need to know about somebody's birthday, I'll have that in my calendar on another color. Red's bad. Red's bad. Usually involves a lawyer or having to talk to an accountant or, something like that. So I color code everything. And the things that I'm passionate about, that I want to be doing, are all in variations of green. Now, the only reason I chose green was that in Outlook, there's a lot of variations of green. So if I am doing an interview like this is in my calendar in one color, one variation of green. If I'm speaking publicly to a group of people, I love to talk and pour into people. That's another shade. If I'm writing, that's another shade. If I'm working on charitable work, that's another shade of green. So they're all different shades of green. When my late wife was alive and I was coming down to the office, she would say to me, so do you have a green day today? And I would say, yeah, I got a green day, or no, it's a little blue, or there's red, or whatever. She would know what that means. So I am a zealot about managing my calendar. And here's the principle that I use. I believe in entrepreneurs either working in their flame or working in their wax. And when they're in their flame, they're on fire. They're excited. They love what they're doing. They're passionate about it. You can hear it in their voice. You can see it in the way they behave. When they're working in their wax, it just takes all their energy away. And you can hear that in their voice, and you can see that in the way they behave. The more we as entrepreneurs can work in our flame and not in our wax, the more we're devoting time to achieving the success that we want in life.
Whew. That is so good. That's worth the trip just right there.
That's worth the price of admission to this recording, isn't it?
That's
Or this
right. That's right.
live show.
In a book by the same name, you speak of a room full of referrals. Here's a scenario. We walk into a room full of people and know exactly how to gain referrals for our business. We understand what conversation to start and with whom. That's something I'm all about. I'm in on that. What's the secret to that?
Well, in that book, we talk about behavioral styles and understanding the behavioral styles that you're dealing with, because when you're dealing with different people who have different behavioral styles, it makes all the difference in the world in how you talk to them. For example, somebody with a high D personality, a high drive personality, and I'm referring to a variation of the DISC instrument: drive, influence, steadiness, compliance. And one of my co-authors in that book is one of the world's leading experts, Tony Alessandra, on behavior profiles. And when you're dealing with a high D, he likes to say, be brief, be direct, and be gone. It's give me the facts. They're sort they want the facts. They want to know the results in particular. When you're dealing with somebody who's very analytical, they want the data. They don't even need to know where it's going to go. They just want you to provide the data. If you're dealing with a high I personality, you want to make a connection with them as an individual, because they're very people oriented. And so, hey, talk to me about what you like about business. You get them. You're in a room, there are referrals everywhere, but you got to understand who you're talking to in order to understand how to make a connection with that person, so that when you make that connection, that it can lead to a relationship that turns into referrals.
But I want to double down on that. How does one master the technique of determining which is which?
Oh, you've got to do homework. In a 3-minute response, I could spend an hour with you and you'd scratch the surface of understanding the various behavior profiles of drive, influence, steadiness, and compliance. So my advice to you is read books on behavior profiles. Room Full of Referrals gives you behavior profiles as they relate to networking. But if you really want to understand the concept of behavior profiles, just pick up any material by Tony Alessandra, where he really goes into depth and talks about the high D personality, who's very assertive, the high I personality, who's very people oriented, the high S personality, who's very detailed and analytical in what they want, and the high C personality, who just give me the rules. Tell me the rules, tell me what I got to do, give me the manual, I'll read every word. They're different personalities. And if you treat them all the same, you're not recognizing the best way to communicate with them.
Fascinating. Talk to us about network disconnect and how to avoid it.
Yeah. So I kind of stumbled into this concept when I went to an event in the United Kingdom years ago, and there were like 900 people in the audience. And it was an all-day event. I was a keynote speaker, and I was watching as, person after person. There was a lot of open networking, and then everyone would sit down and watch the speaker. I watched a lot of face-to-face cold calling going on. Hi, Clay, my name's so-and-so. Let's do business. Or here's 3 copies of my card. Maybe you can give them to some people. And so I got off script in the beginning of my presentation, and I asked 2 questions to the 900 people. I said, here's my first question. How many of you are here? Raise your hands if you're hoping to, maybe just possibly sell something. Like 900 people raised their hands. Whole audience was, yeah, that's why I'm here. I want to sell something. I said, great, thank you very much. Second question. How many of you are here today hoping to, maybe just possibly buy something? No one raised their hands. Not one single person. This is what I call the networking disconnect. People show up at networking events wanting to sell, but almost no one is there wanting to buy. So the question then, it begs the question, why go? You go to a networking event, and this is the foundation of everything I teach. You go to a networking event to work your way through the VCP process. VCP, visibility, credibility, profitability. So if you meet people you've never met before, you got to get to visibility. People have to know who you are and what you do. Then when you've met them a few times, well, actually quite a few times, and they've gotten to know who you are, they know what you do, over time, and this is the one that takes the longest, you establish credibility with them. And credibility is where people know who you are, they know what you do, they know you're good at it. But only then can you move to profitability, where people know who you are, they know what you do, they know you're good at it, and they're willing to refer business to you. What tends to happen is that people, they go to a networking event, they try to jump over visibility, they try to jump over credibility, and they try to get right to profitability. And in one of my books, Clay, we call that premature solicitation, which you don't want to say fast 3 times, it'll get you in trouble. And that's the networking disconnect. So you should not be going to networking meetings to sell. You should be going to networking meetings to build relationships, because networking is more about farming than it is about hunting. It's about cultivating relationships. It's about moving through the VCP process: visibility, credibility, profitability.
Let me ask you this question. I want to trail that just a bit. Instinct is an important factor in doing business. You have to have intellect, you have to study, you have to be prepared, you have to know your market, know your product or service and all of that. But there is an amount of instinct that goes along with it, especially with what you are describing right now. Could you speak to me about developing an instinct to where when you walk into a room, whether you are judging personalities or understanding VCP, how everything works? What's the value of instinct in networking?
Listen, I'm a believer in use of instinct, but I think instinct comes with effective instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Generally comes with experience. And instinct can be relied upon when you have a fair amount of instinct of experience in a particular area where that instinct kicks in and you want to follow it. And you may not be able to pick up on exactly why, but all of the experience that you have had allows you to make a decision reasonably quickly about a situation. But I think if you have no experience, your instinct can be faulty. If you have no experience in managing people, none, your instinct you may be relying on experiences that don't relate to, I'll give you a real life example. I've never done this example on an interview, but here's a real life example of people who use instinct in the wrong way. When I promoted people, I don't run BNI now. I have a CEO who runs BNI, but I ran it for 30 years. And when I promoted people from a line position to a supervisory or management position, oftentimes I would see these people who got promoted becoming or really being very, very chummy with their employees. And I would say, look, you're in a supervisory position now. And so just be cognizant of the fact that it's a different professional relationship, and that friendship that you had when you were peers can actually create a problem when you are their boss. And most people were like, yeah, I kind of get that. I see that. And so you have this balancing act. But I had this one woman who went with her instinct. And she said, no. I've got a lot of experience with these people, I've been friends for years with some of them. There's not going to be a problem. I said, okay, well, I'm just offering advice, take it or not. And just literally 3 months later, she sat down with me and she said, oh my gosh, my instinct was way off on that one, because I sat down and did a review on a person, and it was a tough review. They really weren't performing. And the first thing out of that person's mouth was, really? We're friends. How could you do this to me? And so I think instinct is powerful. I use it a lot. I also recognize that effective instinct generally comes from life experiences that allow us to calculate everything quickly in our mind and come up with a feeling based on many experiences we've had. Does that make sense?
Wow, it does. At the virtual summit for introvert business owners in March, you did an awesome session called Introverted Strategies for Networking. Some people might be surprised that you consider yourself an introvert. Talk to us about the traits of an introvert and how they can make a person be successful even in networking, and some of the strategies that you've used.
Yeah, well, let's talk first about me considering myself an introvert, because I did not. So I'll see if I can make this a short story. My late wife, one day we were having dinner and our kids were teenagers, and that night they were at a school thing it was a practice thing that we couldn't be at. And so it was like our first night as a couple alone for dinner in years. And it was wonderful. We're having this great conversation. And I said something about, oh, honey, you know me, I'm such an extrovert. And she's like, no, you're not. And I'm like, yeah, of course I'm an extrovert. I mean, I run the world's largest network. I'm an extrovert. She's like, yeah, whatever you say, if that's what you think. I'm like, no, you don't go there. I mean, why would I not be an extrovert? And so she starts telling me these habits that I have that are introverted. I'm like, yeah, okay, but I'm a keynote speaker. I can't possibly be an introvert. And so she could give me more. She said, I read this book called The Introvert and Extrovert in Love. And she was definitely an extrovert. And then she said, but introverts recharge their batteries by being alone. They don't want to be around people. Your family maybe, but not outside. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's me. But I am not an introvert. And now I'm annoyed. So I go to my office in my house. And it was a different office. I lived elsewhere. And I got online and I took a test, introvert or extrovert. And it comes up, it says, congratulations, Ivan Misner, you are an introvert who is a situational extrovert, which means when you're talking about a subject that you come across as an extrovert, or if you're with friends, you come across as an extrovert. Otherwise, you're an introvert. Go apologize to your wife. Okay, didn't say that last part, but I did go and apologize. So yeah, I'm an introvert who is a situational extrovert. And obviously I'm talking about my wheelhouse. And so I come across as an extrovert. I think introverts can be great at networking. And it made me think about the kind of network I created, BNI. Intimate groups of people, 20, 30, 40, maybe more people getting together every week to build relationships, to get to know one another. I could have created a network that was a party, a big mixer, hundreds of people. You know why I didn't? I felt uncomfortable. I don't like walking up and introducing myself to strangers. Yeah, the founder of the world's largest networking organization is uncomfortable walking up and introducing himself to strangers. And it was an epiphany for me when I found out. So I believe that introverts and extroverts can both be great at networking.
That's awesome. Share with us.
Can I tell you why? Introverts
Sure.
need to learn how to introduce themselves to people. And one technique is to go with somebody who's an extrovert who will introduce you. That's what I do.
There you
and
go.
Extroverts, they are obviously great at networking, but they have a weakness. Extroverts have no problem talking, but what's their favorite subject?
Themselves.
They need to learn that a good networker has 2 ears and 1 mouth and should use them both proportionately. Introverts are great listeners. Extroverts aren't. Both have a strength, both have a weakness. Both can be great at networking when they know how to work it based on whether they're an introvert or extrovert, just like the behavior profile thing we were talking about.
Awesome. Okay, final question. Share with us 3 final takeaways that you'd like to share with our viewers.
Well, I touched upon the one. It's really important that you do one-to-ones when you do one-to-ones. Use a technique. You can find the technique, and I'll give you the website where I have a blog on it. Clay, and you can put it in the show notes if you have some. It's called the Gains Exchange: how you use your goals, accomplishments, interests, networks, and skills as a conversation point in one-to-ones, and it helps you accelerate the relationship building process. The second thing is remember the VCP, and I'll give you a link to that as well. VCP is critical in building a powerful personal business. And the last one is might be counterintuitive. You know the old expression, Clay, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my belief on that. I don't believe it's either. I don't believe it's what you know or who you know. It's how well you know each other that counts. It's how deep that relationship is that you have. If your network is a mile wide and an inch deep, you don't have a powerful network. You have to have a network where it is both wide, but it's also deep in areas. The question is not who's in your contact database. Who do you know? It's who do you know who you could pick up the telephone and call? Would they take your call? And if you ask them for a favor, would they be willing to do you the favor? So it's not just who you know, it's how well you know each other that really makes a difference in networking.
Amazing. Dr. Misner, you've given us so much information. I've enjoyed our time together. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. IvanMisner.com is the blog where I'll send you some links, and of course, BNI.com for those who are interested in visiting BNI.
I'd also like to thank all of you, our guests, for joining me this morning, and thank our sponsors for making this episode possible.